Welcome to the Cooperation in Education podcast series. In this limited series, we will dive into the future of higher education and explore how cooperations can transform learning experiences. This podcast series is part of the Cooperation in Education Knowledge Gateway project, in short, the CIE Gateway project. CIE Gateway is an international project that aims to support educators in better preparing their students for the dynamic and challenging world of work. We do that by 1. Encouraging multidisciplinary and external collaborations, 2. Fostering engagement with industry and society for educational practice, and 3. Equipping academic staff with tools and resources to enhance education delivery. The CIE Gateway project unites partners from 4 countries across Europe: IMTBS from France, FH Münster from Germany, UIN for the Netherlands, and Young from Finland. The CIE Gateway project is funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the authors only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the Finnish National Agency for Education. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them. Hi, welcome back to our Cooperation Education podcast series. I'm your host, Mainara Freking, researcher at the FH Münster, working in the CIE Gateway project. In today's episode, we will discuss the topic empowering educators, small steps to support educators in their cooperation journeys. And I have a very special guest with me today. Here is Dr. Roy Priest, an esteemed educator at Birmingham City University College of Computing. So hi, Roy, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you very much for being here and accepting our invitation for this talk. And Dr. Priest has a PhD in education from the University of Warwick, and he's an associate professor and college academic lead for employability and mobility at Birmingham City University, BCU, in the UK. We are incredibly excited to have you as an expert in the area to explore these collaborative projects, especially discussing what are the small steps that can be put out there to support the educators through this cooperation journey, because most of the times don't know how to start. So first things first, Roy, I would like to begin by saying that your journey through academia is really inspiring, especially with your role as a college academic lead for employability and mobility. So it sounds really fascinating. And I would just like you to start walking us through a bit for your academic journey, how you led to this position at the BCO.
Yeah, thank you for today. It's great to be able to share some of my experience and enthusiasm for external engagement. So I came to academia as a mature student. I worked in the music industry for a while, and then eventually I went back to university and did my degree. So I was particularly focused at that point and determined to make the most of the opportunity. Being in that environment, I just really enjoyed it, and I thought I want to stay. So I had the opportunity to teach over the summer following my degree, and I helped out over the summer, and I just didn't leave. And I'm still here 21 years later. Something that really struck me when I was on the course was that there was no industry engagement at all. And it was something that I felt passionately that we could do more to support and develop. When I became an academic, I quickly evolved into being a course leader, and I took the opportunity to influence, basically. And, I had contacts and I drew on contacts, and I brought those into the classroom, and I just saw the benefit. I saw the way that students responded. And out of all that, in parallel, was my own research. So my degree was a science degree, but I found that my real passion was education and employability and looking at ways of transforming students' lives, basically. And then since then, my roles have kind of evolved. I was head of department of digital media technology for a while. My latest role is college academic lead for employability and mobility, and I can talk more about that later, perhaps.
Sounds really awesome, and I think this role that you have is where we want to start, actually, because things that has a lot of potential to impact students, industry, and also the institution, the university itself. So perhaps you can tell us more about this role as college academic lead for employability and mobility, how it has contributed for your personal goals, for the university, and any improvements. What have you seen happening through your role?
Okay, so the mission of BCU is to be the university for Birmingham. So it's very much a practice-based university. So it's about giving those frameworks to students to enhance their opportunities when they graduate, their graduate employability. So in terms of the role, obviously the success of the university is measured in different ways. One of the key ways that the government measures our success is graduate employability. And in the UK, the government has their own metrics by which they deem a graduate role to be successful or not. So obviously from a government point of view, they're looking for value for money in terms of the student loans that they pay out and the support that they give to higher education. So from our point of view, we obviously train students. I come from the College of Computing. Our courses are science degrees and they are obviously technical in their nature. But we know, talking to industry partners, the feedback that we typically get, we had this again reiterated only recently, is that our graduates have the technical skills that employers require for initial graduate employment for those entry-level jobs. But there's more that we could do to prepare them in terms of, well, these have got different names: transferable skills, softer skills, power skills is the latest word, but the kind of things we're talking about: communication skills, problem solving, teamwork, time management, leadership, emotional intelligence, adaptability, resilience, all of those things. I think the fact that they're now called power skills is a positive thing, because it's, they're just so important. The kind of jobs that our graduates go on to do, they'll be working in teams. They're going to have to communicate effectively across teams, both in whichever country they're based and also internationally. So these skills, particularly project management skills, are so important. Which brings us round to, I suppose, my role, which is to embed employability in the curriculum, and underpinning that is industry engagement. So we feel that the way to enhance the employability of our graduates is through ongoing engagement with industry. So I've been doing this for a number of years in my previous roles, and I was seen to be in alignment with what the university now wants to focus on. So hence, I got one of these new roles that was designed about a year ago now, and there's similar roles across the university. So the idea was to have these roles in all the faculties at a college level, and then for us to work together as a group across the university to share our practice and to discuss any barriers and to work together, basically. So we're about just over a year into that piece of work now. So, and just in terms of mobility, so that covers the employability bit, but the mobility side of what I do, we're looking to offer potentially transformative experiences for our students whilst they're with us, to study abroad, or maybe to go and do some voluntary work abroad. Since leaving the EU, obviously when we were part of the EU, we were part of the Erasmus scheme. Since leaving the EU, the government has created the Turing scheme, which aims to do the same job, which is to support students, to give them opportunities to go abroad.
So it is a thing that it's about working together. And it's really great because, as you said, we need to prepare the next generations of workers, right? And sometimes they don't have the chance. I would say my next question would be, you already mentioned how you approach that, but how specifically you make your students feel supported and empowered through the education.
Yeah, so in terms of empowering our students, I think for me, the key thing is that when students join us at the university, I always emphasize that they are now adult learners and they are developing their academic skills to be academic in their approach. And I try to encourage them to take ownership of their own learning. And obviously, this is a journey that they're on, and different students are at different levels of maturity when they join us. But I think it's important that we say to them, you are not passive recipients of information. You need to be active learners, and we need to give them platforms to develop those skills. And I think for me, it's to enjoy practicing those skills. There's a lot of pressure, I'm sure there is around the world, but there's a lot of pressure in the UK for at the earlier levels, further education and schools, for the students to achieve good grades and to get them through and to get them onto the next stage. I'm not being negative, but that can mean they've been so drilled to pass exams and to get certain qualifications. We need them to kind of almost take a step back and to say, look, you've got 3 years with us, or maybe 4. Embrace the opportunity to learn. And there's an opportunity here for you to shape your own learning. The curriculum has enough movement in it to allow you to take some ownership. And that takes a little while for that change of culture to kick in. So in terms of what that means on the ground, if it was my module, I would make it clear, well, at a course level, we make it clear what the aims of the course, what they're about and why, and that cascades into the modules. And the key thing there is to justify why we're doing what we're doing. I've witnessed that students are quite often, they need reassurance. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? What's the benefit? And I'm quite happy to say these are the benefits and this is why we're doing it. This is the approach to assessment and why. I heard recently of a colleague taking it one step further, and they show the students job ads. So let's say they're learning a particular language, week 1, lesson 1 or tutorial 1. The colleague will bring up the number of employers that are looking for these skills, that they're looking for, and the amount of opportunities that are out there. That tends to focus the students' minds. This is real. These are skills that we need to succeed. So I thought that was great. So in terms of delivering this, we've moved away from didactic teaching and the large lectures. That's been a real movement over the last few years. We still have some of that, but I think the direction of travel is towards project-based learning. And this is based on case studies or live briefs, ideally, which are born out of interactions with industry. So we nurture these industry partnerships, and out of that, they help us to shape our assessments to reflect industry practice. So just as an example, we have acoustics modules on a couple of our courses, and they're quite technical, and the assessment involves students taking some measurements. In talking to industry partners, they looked at our assessment and they said you haven't allowed for tolerance. So in industry, there has to be an allowance for tolerance in terms of measurements and what that means. So we factored that into the assessment. We changed our assessment to more closely reflect industry practice. So that's just one tiny example. In terms of other things that we do, we obviously have guest lectures, and I find that guest lectures is a way of developing partnerships. It's quite an easy thing to implement. The students appreciate it. So that's kind of a base level. But beyond that, we can have workshops where the guests are actively working alongside students, and that works really well. Formative feedback as well. This has been something that I'm keen to cascade more widely. It does happen on some modules and some classes, but the reason I like it is that the students' assessment and the summative part of the assessment, which could be perhaps a presentation or a report, that can be quite stressful. And to have industry engagement at that point can be tricky for some students. By making it formative and taking away the stress of marks, it can really help them to engage. So what I'm talking about really is, imagine that it's group-based work and the students are 3/4 of the way through the module. They've developed the draft of what is going to be their final submission, and that can be shared with industry partners. They're not necessarily looking at every single piece of work. There could be a big group, but they're dipping in and they're looking at typical issues and typical things that they could comment on from an industry point of view. We might do this virtually because it makes life so much easier. So you'd have a classroom at BCU where the students are all gathered, and then they may give a very brief introduction to their work to the industry guests that are joining us virtually. And this might be, say, 3 or 4 guests from different companies. They've all had the work beforehand, so they've had a chance to look at the work and think about it. And then they give their feedback. And the students from all the different groups benefit from that feedback. And I found that to be really useful. It's it takes away some of the pressure. I found that the industry partners really engage with that. They embrace the opportunity to look at some students' work and to give them some insight. And that's something that I'm trying to cascade more widely. In terms of summative feedback, yes, for our final year projects, there's an opportunity for industry guests as part of our industry. We call it Innovation Fest, which is where we have industry partners come on site at our new facility, Steam House, and they look at student projects, and they can give prizes and give some awards for particularly good work. So all in all, it's about providing a range of opportunities for students to interact with industry-based professionals and to build their confidence and to build some of those skills that we were talking about earlier, the communication skills, the project management skills, time management, all of that, to try and embed that in the curriculum.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I saw as a student, what I want and would like to have, and also seeing the educators to trying to provide that is really great. It is really admirable that you try so many ways and so many formulas and formats, so you really provide every chance you can, every opportunity you can for the students to develop that. And on that note, I would like to move on to the main topic, let's say, from today. So that's how to empower the educators. Then how do the educators do that? How can we tell them, okay, this is the way you could follow to do this, that you just mentioned all these opportunities to provide them and their students? So, right, what are the small steps that we can provide to educators that never work with this type of projects? So how can they start this cooperation journey, let's say?
It's really important to remember that academics come at industry engagement from different perspectives. So in my experience, colleagues that have worked in industry before working in academia tend to find this reasonably straightforward, and they may already have contacts in industry that they can go back to and build upon, but that kind of hurdle isn't typically there for those people. For colleagues, went through university, stayed in higher education, did their PhD, and have built a career wholly in education, some of those can find it a bit of a step to build those links. They may not have those initial links, and it can be a bit daunting. So I think the important thing for us all to remember is that we need to share the positives as to why this is beneficial, and then not to expect colleagues to know how to do this. And I think that in my experience, there's things that I might take for granted that others don't. And I can come back to that in a moment. So my key initial thought is to highlight the benefits to colleagues. Why bother? If you're a busy academic and you're teaching and you've got research that you're thinking about, industry engagement can be perceived as just one more thing. So the way I've done that, the way that I've shared the benefits is through mentorship, typically informal. So I would have colleagues who are naturally inclined towards industry engagement sharing their experience. And what I found is that it's worked really well, particularly when they share some of the unexpected benefits. So we try and do that. We try and say, look, sometimes you don't know where it's going to lead and what the benefits are. But if you have an open mind and you enjoy it and you reach out, you'd be surprised as to where it might lead. But I think there's other sides to it as well. So surfacing best practice. So I tend to have my ear to the ground as to what's going on in terms of industry engagement, but I don't necessarily know all the good things that are going on. And sometimes there's best practice going on that needs to be shared. There needs to be platforms to do that. And I think also we need to tease out barriers. So sometimes these barriers can be quite straightforward. So for instance, if we're having industry guests, sometimes those lectures or those presentations are free. Sometimes we pay a nominal sum to those guests. For internal reasons, there could be delays because our systems can be a bit slow, as they are in universities maybe sometimes. And that can make it difficult perhaps for the academic or difficult for the guest. So anything like that, anything that allows our processes just to speed up, to make it easy and to reduce barriers for the academic, that is a very welcome thing. Also training as well, simple things. So when I write to companies and say, hey, would you like to perhaps start off with a guest lecture, maybe work with us. Those kind of contacts typically come through placements where a company is looking to engage our students for a year, and then we build on that. So we use that platform to try to get a deeper relationship. Now, I've had colleagues say to me, yes, but how do you frame that initial cold calling email? And I'm happy to share examples, crib sheets. This is how I do it. The way I do it is very much giving them every opportunity to say no. And not expecting too much at first. Just say to them, it would be great to have your input, and this is what we do, and then small steps and build it. Don't ask for too much straight away because you'll put people off, basically. I heard an example recently where a colleague, they hadn't really built a relationship with this company yet, but they were saying, would you look at our assessments? Now, to me, that is just too much too soon. They need to understand what the course is about, what the kind of graduate expectations are, and from that, you can get onto deeper engagement. So small things, training in that regard can be really helpful. It's also important for this kind of work to be reflected in individual performance. So we have IPRs in BCU, which is a biannual measure of academics performance. And we measure various things, first-time pass rates, graduate employability. You can imagine all the various things. But as part of that, having employability and industry engagement as part of those reviews. In other words, you're saying from a university level, this is important. This is a key performance indicator. We will give you some goals, and we will expect you to work towards this, and we will support you. But it's important, and I think that helps to get the message across as well. Yeah, and the final thought there is to always be mindful of the time commitments that we're expecting from industry partners. Whatever we do with them, it needs to be quite efficient, and we need to be always mindful that they've got a day job. And if we keep that in mind, there's a whole range of things that they can become involved with.
No, definitely, it's very important that everyone is busy. It is great when you have the support from the university side. So you as an educator, okay, would like to do that. But when you have the support, and we know sometimes, as you mentioned, the support from the university takes longer, as a lot of bureaucratic stuff is not somehow easier and faster as we would like to. I believe in sharing is the key, right? As you mentioned also in the beginning, if you share, okay, these are the benefits, this works, this does not work, making this awareness makes everything, the process somehow easier. And we need to share this and show people this is real. It gives results. It is fulfilling for all the sides involved in the end. Students are happy, companies are happy, everyone in the end is growing and learning something, right? And as we are talking about the collaborative projects, and you already mentioned a couple that you do at BCU, could you share more examples of these successful cooperations that you have integrated in the BCU framework?
Yes, certainly. So just as one example, a lot of what we try and do is to be embedded in the main curriculum itself, but we also have examples of extracurricular activities. So one of these that my colleagues have developed, they're called special interest groups. So you might imagine students on our courses, they study a range of modules, and there could be particular areas that are important to them in terms of their particular ambitions. So they may be doing an audio course. I mentioned acoustics earlier, so it could be that they have ambitions to work as an acoustic consultant. So what they can do, they can join an extracurricular group, which is student-led, and it's usually led by a student who's done a placement. So they've returned, they did 2 years with us, 1 year on placement, they're now in their final year with an ambition to work in acoustics, and they can lead a special interest group. And the idea is that we actually have real world problems that need solving. So it's real world work that they're doing, which is ideal for CVs and ideal for when they're in that interview for their first graduate post, and they can say, hey, I've done something beyond the curriculum because that's how interested I am. In terms of other examples, the thing that really interests me is informal course level industrial advisory boards. So this is bringing it down to the level of the course and maybe the module. So these people, hopefully they're drawn from a range of companies. They could be large multinationals or small SMEs, and they work with us over a number of years. And they get to know the courses and they get to know the modules, and we meet them on a semi-regular basis, and we have particular issues we're looking to talk about, and that works really well.
Sounds great. It's just so many types and so many chances that you have when you start thinking. when you just put it out, collaborative project, and then people, okay, industry, collaboration, and then you think, okay, I just need a company, and then what do I do, right? So I think sometimes it is still really abstract. What does it mean in practice? How to put it into practice, right? And I think that is one of the first barriers most of the time if an educator have never done that before, like, as you said, cannot see the value, and it's important to share it out there. And on that note, would you think, or have you ever seen there is a training in a specific to teach the educators on how to perform such a project type? Or what do they need to do to, okay, I see the challenge. How do I overcome this challenge of I don't know how to do it, or even during the project? So first question would be then, okay, would a training course for these educators that never worked with these projects be helpful? And if yes or no, and what they do to overcome all these challenges that come with all these projects types?
Yes, so it's something I've been working on is the training. I think it's fair to say that in my previous role as head of department, it was kind of in-house within within the department, and it was through mentorship. The role I've got now is more college-wide, so there's a need to be a bit more consistent and a bit more organised in the approach. So I'm developing that at the moment. And one of the key things I want to focus on, we encourage our students to go out on placement. Not all of them do, but a percentage go out on a professional placement for a year. That's a fantastic opportunity for a member of staff to go and visit a company and to build relationships with those companies. In my experience, some members of staff will run with that opportunity, and they don't need any encouragement to make the most of that those meetings. They will naturally be inquisitive, and they will ask questions, and they will talk about the technology they're using and the processes they're working on, and etc. Other colleagues maybe not. So there's things we can do to say, look, here's some training, here's some examples of what you can talk about when you're with that company. And that really helps, because from that platform, it builds confidence for the academic to say, hey, I can build these networks. I can, while I'm there visiting a student, say to the line manager, would you like to do a guest lecture? Come and visit us on site, come and get to know the course team and meet the team. And from that, deeper relationships can develop. I think also alumni is critically important. So again, you may get a colleague who says, I don't know anybody in this particular sector. We do, because we've got so many graduates that have gone to work in these areas. LinkedIn is easy. We encourage our students to join LinkedIn. It's an easy way of reaching out to them, saying, hey, it's great to see you doing so well in your current role. Would you like to come back and talk to the students? And they always say yes. I've never had a graduate who said, no, Roy, thank you very much, I'm too busy. They're usually very keen to say, I'm very happy to have got a job that I enjoy and I would like to share.
No, that's definitely great. As an alumni myself, I will always be happy as well to come back and share. And I think when you're built or when you study in this environment already, it makes it even easier, because you see alumni coming back and everything. So it is even as a circle, and it's a further motivation for the next ones, right? To come back and share and be in touch, and which is great. And as you said, it starts with a simple LinkedIn message inviting for a guest lecture, or just a speak, or just a coffee or something, and that's it. It could be a great start for a whole big collaboration, and you do not have to have the CEO contact. The smaller ones, they are already in.
We call it employability ecosystem, and it's this idea of having recognizable role models. When you're a young student, it can be quite hard to imagine yourself in that role, and to meet somebody who you can relate to, who isn't necessarily that much older than you, who can talk to you and understands where you're coming from. It's invaluable, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then one of my final questions would be, what do you see as the future of this collaborative projects world, or this cooperation with industry and higher education? So how do you see it evolving for the future, and how can then the educators embrace all this?
Okay, so I really enjoy talking to academics from around the world who have a similar interest to me. That's been one of the bonuses. It's meeting people who are on a similar mindset from Australia or Europe or the States. It's been fantastic. The good news is that I've only witnessed an appetite for engagement from industry partners. There's untapped goodwill out there that I think we're not making the most of. I think universities could do more to highlight the benefits of industry engagement as part of their course marketing. I think it's so important, and I think we still tend to focus on these are the modules, these are the learning outcomes, and on a website where it really puts front and center, these are some of the exciting things you'll do with these companies, not necessarily particular companies, but this type of company is so important. I think we need to allow staff the space to tell us what the barriers are. Not to presume that we have all the answers, but to listen to them.
That makes total sense. It's in the end, it's all about communicating and talking. As you said, just have an open floor and the ears open. And I would go a further step and say it needs to be an active listening. It's not only a hearing for the sake of hearing, but it's a hearing of, okay, I want to make it better. Just as a final note, a final question, anything else you would like to share as a hint for future educators or educators that would like to engage in this project? One nice tip for them or something?
I think for me is I really enjoy talking to people that are interested in developing industry networks and in terms of getting industry engagement in curriculum development. I've got an open door. If anybody wants to contact me and discuss ideas that they're pursuing or discuss further ideas that I've pursued, I'll be happy to engage with them. I think it's added another dimension to my work. I found it really helpful to me, and it's brought me a lot of satisfaction in terms of my job. It keeps it interesting. It helps my modules and the courses that I've been involved with to stay up to date and to keep evolving. And I've seen the benefits that colleagues who have got on board with this, I've seen the benefits that they've had from such engagement.
It seems it's a win-win, always a win-win situation. Thank you so much, Roy, for contributing here to our podcast, for sharing your awesome insights, your expertise. It was really inspiring for me, and I hope for the listeners too, to hear about all these initiatives, all these tips that you gave for the educators. And I will wrap up today's episode then encouraging the listeners, the educators, to explore these opportunities, to reach out to people, as you just said, talk to people that are there already and initiate, because the resources are there somehow. You just need to have the willingness to be part of this movement and grow with it. There's so much value coming from all of this, as we heard today. So thank you so much, Roy. Thank you to the listeners that are listening to this episode today with Roy Priest about empowering educators, small tips to support educators in their cooperation journeys. And we'll see you next time. And Roy, you are welcome to come back here anytime, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Join us as we continue to explore collaborative projects and their role in the future of higher education. Follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. If you're interested in further materials, check out the show notes of this episode, where you will find a link to our project website. We will fill it with further content and resources in the upcoming weeks. Cooperation in Education podcast series, where collaboration meets inspiration.